Welcome to Just Kick It with Big Bob, where I share my 2 bobs worth with you whether you like it or not. It was a close call for the Pies. Matter of fact, you couldn't get much closer, and you can't argue with that. It wasn't pretty to watch, with very few passages of what you'd call free-flowing play, but the Magpies managed to scrape home by a point over the Giants, reversing last year's scenario when 1 point kept them out, whereas this year 1 point got them in. Poetic justice, some might say, not me mind, and the irony was not lost on any of the 97,000 in attendance, whereas GWS failed to appreciate the scenario in any way, shape or form, and weren't they gallant in defeat, and it must be said unlucky in the final analysis. But their true grit augurs well for their future down the track with their return to traditional football values, and it's working. They've thrown off the shackles and got right on with the business. Why they had the shackles on in the first place remains a mystery, but be that as it may, they were devastated by the narrow defeat, and rightly so, as Coach Kingsley achieved wonders with his charges, and didn't they respond? They go about things in the right way, get front and centre to the drop zone of the ball, zone off, and can manufacture a few St. Petersburg manoeuvres of their own making when the occasion calls for it, proving the old adage that you sow what you reap, providing you have laid the right foundations down in the first place. I may not always know what I'm talking about, but I do know I'm usually right. Très bien ensemble. The Pies will now ice up their bruises and can count themselves lucky in many respects. I know that, you know that, we all know that. The much vaunted Goey showed himself to be the big game player that he thought he was, as he baked the cake on top of which the candles were lit for Fly to blow out, and the cherry on top a ticket to the big one next week, with the most likely scenario being that they will face the Lions, and won't they be keen to put the big cat among the pigeons, or seagulls for that matter, at the MCG, as the case may be. We'll have to wait and see if the Blues can give them a hurry up tonight, but the finish line looks to be out of sight for the Blue Baggers, who would be advised not to count all their chickens in one basket before they hatch, but take solace in getting to a prelim, which they would have taken midway through the season when the knives were out for their coach, and wouldn't he love to knock off his old club against the odds.
Another important announcement from Brill Cream. Men, beware. Use 1 dab of Brill Cream. Just a little dab makes your hair look excitingly clean, disturbingly healthy. This man dared to use 2 dabs. Now he's in trouble. We refuse to be responsible.
Brill Cream, a little dab will do ya. Or watch out, the gals will all pursue ya.
And the other game, up at the Gabba, karaoke capital of the AFL world, the Lions had all the answers to the Blues, who were out of the gates in a rush and looked the goods over the first leg of the journey, and Mackay had his kicking boots on. Blues fans were smiling and glad they depleted the bank balance to make the trip, at the same time hoping that the Blues hadn't spent all their petrol tickets too early. The Lions, who were rusty early, got into their stride, found their feet, and as they began to dissect their way across the turf, forging forward to make up ground in a clinical manner, with the Blues struggling to find a winner and keep up. Their finals campaign looking well and truly down the barrel at the half. Coleman at half-back had a day out and repelled many attacks with deep entries to keep the forwards busy, and he was no orphan in that regard, giving fans something to cheer about as they responded with song and dance before finding full voice as Charlie was led off the chain and put one through the big ones at last. It looked like the Lions would run away with it and win by the length of the straight as the alarm bells were ringing for the Blues, but they found a second wind in the final run home to go down to several lengths. However, in the final analysis, the scoreboard flattered Carlton as they contemplate what might have been, but all things considered, they must take some positives out of the season 2023. And so to the big one next week, and what an absolute ripper we can look forward to. I can't speak highly enough about both coaches and what they've been able to do. They have shared the narrative and controlled the controllables whilst coming under the undeniable scrutiny from the media throughout the long season. At the same time, their respective charges have played an attractive brand of footy. Regardless of the outcome, the Lions will be wearing the white shorts at the Pies' home ground, where there will be a finals-like atmosphere. They've beaten them twice this year and will not shirk the issue nor leave anything in the bank. But they will face a hostile reception, with the prevailing sentiment being an us versus them scenario. As to the likely winner, I'll leave that to the so-called experts, but if I was forced to give an opinion, all I would say, psychedelically speaking, without going into a chapter and verse, is this: it is a simple matter of mind over motivation, and whoever can get the contest at the coalface right on the day will win. They need to take what the game gives them, value themselves in and around the ball, impact the contest, and the team with the least passengers who are not up to the task will get their hands on the silverware. That having been said, anyone can win on any given day, and you can't argue with that. Quod erat demonstratum, in other words, QED. By the way, it was never in doubt in a Sandful final, Gurnell by 4 goals over Sturt. This has been Big Bob, sharing my 2 bobs worth with you, whether you like it or not. Out on the patio we'd sit, and the humidity we'd breathe. We'd watch the lightning crack over the cane fields and laugh and think, this is Australia.